Hi guys. Today is going to be me going over my most anticipated releases of 2025. This video has been sort of long in the making. I know we're already nearly through with January, so I will be retracing some steps a little bit, but yeah, that's what this video is going to be. If you hear some like ambient noise, I have my space heater on because the place where I film is really cold, so I had to put it on or else I would literally freeze to death in here. So yeah, hopefully that's not annoying, but yeah, I'll just get into it. I'm gonna go obviously in chronological order, so I'll start from January through December. I do just want to mention that release dates are very prone to change, especially for, I would say, like the latter half of the year. There's no guarantee that those are going to stay the same, or if they're even accurate right now. I'm just going by what Goodreads says, so yeah, it'll be probably more accurate in the first half and less accurate as we go on. But I'm just going by what Goodreads says for this video's sake. So also, since I like to tap on books while I do these, I'm just gonna hold up a book that I actually haven't hauled yet, but you'll see it in my next haul. But it's this book. So I'm not gonna go over it right now, but you will see it in an upcoming haul, most likely. But yeah, let's get started. Starting with January, the first book is going to be A Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. This released back on the 7th of January. I've already actually hauled my copy if you've seen a past video, but it is a historical fantasy with dragons, and it is set in 1923 London. So yeah, I already got the Waterstones edition of this book. Very excited for it. Another book that came out on the 7th is The Starlight Heir by Emily Howard. I do not actually own this book yet. I'm debating whether I want to get a physical copy or just get one on my Kobo. But this book is a romance fantasy blurbed by Rebecca Yarros, Nisha Tooley, Bridget Kemmerer, and Jennifer Armentrout. So a lot of big names there for the romantasy genre. But this story follows a girl with magic and a prince and a city that's in rebellion, and I believe there's like some feud with some immortals that are mixed in there too. So for these synopsises, I probably won't be going into a lot of detail just because I like to go into books knowing as little as possible usually. So I'm just going to be giving you like a short snippet about what I know about the book. Hopefully you prefer that too. So the next book I can actually show you right now. I have not hauled this book yet either, but it came out on the 14th of January, and it is Lightfall by Ed Crocker. I have not read anything by this author. Again, it came out on the 14th of January. This is the first in a trilogy. It is an epic fantasy filled with vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, those are my favorite things. Epic fantasy with a bunch of paranormal creatures, like say no more, you know. And it's the start in a series. So yeah, this is the cover. Yeah, very excited for this first book in a series. Extremely. You'll probably see that. I'll probably mention it in my haul too, but I had to show you now since it was right here. The next book to release was also released on the 14th. Actually, I can show you that one too, because I actually bought that one as well. You can see I waste no time. So yeah, this released on the 14th. It's called The Last Raven by Helen Glenn Jones. I got this like sprayed page paperback from Barnes & Noble. Really pretty cover, just to throw that out there. But yeah, this is also the first in a series, and this follows a human heir to the throne in a world full of vampires. That's all I know. But again, you mentioned vampires in a fantasy setting, and I'm just like kind of already there, you know? I don't really need to know more. And this cover is really pretty, so that didn't hurt either. Yeah, so very excited for this one. The next book on my anticipated reads comes out on February 4th, and that is The Grave Empire by Richard Swan. I own his previous fantasy series, adult fantasy. I have not read them yet, but I believe this is set in the same world, just in the future. And that's really all I know. Since I haven't read his previous series, I didn't want to look at what this one was about too closely because I didn't want to be spoiled. But yeah, this is an adult fantasy. Reagan from Pruse Project really loved this trilogy, so I'm very excited for it. I own it, I just have not read it yet, aka story of my life. But yeah. And then the next book is also coming out February 4th that I'm looking forward to, and that is The Beasts We Bury by D.L. Taylor. I believe this book is going to be a book pick for a box, like a subscription box that I get. But basically this is the first in a new YA fantasy series. This also follows an heir to the throne. Are you sensing a theme? Who can summon animals with ambiguous morals, and it also follows a thief who is out for revenge. So I love when a protagonist has like a connection to animals. Like, I just always find that really interesting. One of my favorite series of all time, The Immortals Quartet by Tamara Pierce, has that, and again, it's one of my favorite top 10 series ever. So if you mention animal magic, I'm kind of already in. There's quite a few actually February 4th releases, so just settle in. The next is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This also comes out February 4th. This is a YA romance historical fantasy with cruel fae and competitions. That's basically all I know about it. I think it's the romantasy pick for a certain book box. No spoilers, but yeah, it sounds interesting. I love a good fae competition fantasy, you know. I'm always a little intrigued, at least, so curious to pick that one up. And then the next book that comes out on February 4th that I'm anticipating is Black Woods, Blue Sky. This is by Eowyn Ivey, I think. This is really interesting. This is a literary reimagining of Beauty and the Beast. And I just found that premise really, I love Beauty and the Beast. It's my very favorite Disney movie. Disney, like, classic Disney animated movie. I could rewatch it a million times. I would never grow sick of it. And I like that this interpretation is more of like a literary interpretation, not fantasy as much. So I'm curious to see how it'll go. And Eowyn Ivey is also the author of The Snow Child, which I think is a very well-known, renowned book. I have not read it personally, but I'm curious to get this one. And the next book on my list is another February 4th. I told you, like, there's a lot. Is The Bones Beneath My Skin, and that is by T.J. Klune. I love T.J. Klune's Green Creek series. I haven't read much of his like other books that I know are popular. I was really here for the werewolves, so but yeah, this is his next book, and it's a thriller about a young girl with an impossible power, her father, and a stranger who sort of form a found family to protect her. And it's set in 1995 as well, so that's the year I was born. So I just was like, cool, is this historical now? I don't know. But the premise I found really intriguing. I don't know if he's written thrillers so much before, but I love a found family, so I was curious. The next book is Emily Wilde 3. The name escapes me, but the third book in the Emily Wilde series, by Heather Fawcett. This comes out February 11th. And this series is basically like a cozy-ish fae fantasy with like a scientific lean, I believe, like a researcher edge. I haven't read it yet. I own the first 2 books. I just have not read them. But I have read Heather Fawcett's debut young adult fantasy duology, which I think is slept on because it's so good. It's so good. It's called Even the Darkest Stars. It's a duology. And if you've read her newer popular series, you should read her backlist because it's great. And that's my rant for the day. The next book that I'm looking forward to is The Forest King's Daughter. This is by Ellie Blake. So Ellie Blake has written young adult fantasy before. It was a while ago. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Frostblood. I think it was called Frostblood. And it was about like people with like ice magic versus fire magic. I was intrigued at the time, but not enough to buy it. I'd heard kind of mixed reviews, so I ended up not giving it a read. But I am curious about her new series because like a lot has changed in the YA book market since then, or just the book market in general. Like the pandemic happened and book talk boomed and all that. So like I'm curious how this new series will read, like if she's sort of adopted the new sort of fantasy romantasy air that like has been popularized. So this series is called The Forest King's Daughter, and all I know is that it is a YA romance fantasy, and it's like a forest fantasy, like obviously because forest is in the title. But again, if you've been on this channel anytime, you know that I love forest fantasy. It's kind of my thing. If you give me like my favorite things, historical, forest, like folklore leaning fantasy, like if you gave me those things, that's all I need in life. So yeah, so very excited to see what this one will read like. It seems a little bit more up my alley than her previous series. So the next book comes out on February 25th. It's by Juliette Marillier, who's a very, very well-renowned classic adult fantasy writer. And this is a new series by her. I don't know if it's young adult or adult. I'm assuming adult because her previous series was adult, but I have not checked. But it's called The Amber Owl. And this is a forest fantasy with a protagonist who has a gift with animals. So, I mean, yeah. I have her like original series that she's famous for. It was another forest fantasy. The name is escaping me, which is annoying, but I have it. I just haven't read it yet. So again, story of my life. But moving on, the next book, we're finally in March. I know, we're just in the first 2 months. Buckle in. March 4th, the next book I'm interested in is The Radiant King by David Dalglish, I think is how you say his name. This is the start of a new epic fantasy trilogy about immortal demigods, civil wars, and an ancient evil. So it just sounds really good. The cover is also really cool looking. Just a good classic adult fantasy, so I'm looking forward to this one. Also on March 4th is kind of another, something about 4th, like February 4th is big, March 4th is big. I don't make the rules. But another book I'm looking forward to is Once Was Willem by M.R. Carey, I think. This is a dark epic fantasy fable taking place in historical England, and that's all I know. The cover is really cool. So yeah, this one intrigued me. The next March 4th release is A Harvest of Hearts by Andrea Eames. This is blurbed as a whimsical fantasy somewhat akin to Howl's Moving Castle, filled with sorcerers and strange magic. So I love Howl's Moving Castle, both the book and the film. So I'm excited to see how, like, what the comparison is. So yeah. The next March 4th book is The Scorpion and the Night Blossom by Emily Winslow. I read this author's debut series, Blood Heir, and I really liked it. She's written another fantasy after that series that I have not gotten to yet, but I do physically own. I think it's Silver Like Night. I'll put it up here. But yeah, I loved her writing in that first series, so I'm obviously going to keep supporting her and get this new series starter. But basically this is a new duology in a world full of demons inspired by Chinese mythology. So it sounds really good. The cover's beautiful. There's like a pre-order art that's stunning. So really excited to see this book, and hopefully I'll love it as much as her first series. The next book I have on my list is another March 4th. It is Fable for the End of the World by Ava Reid. So I feel bad about putting this one on my list because I own quite a few Ava Reid books and I have yet to read one. So, you know, the practical part of me is like, I should maybe read one of those before I check this out. But the other part of me is like, it's a sapphic fantasy and you're desperately trying to find a sapphic fantasy that you love, aside from my beloved Gideon the Ninth. So yeah, I might just have to pick this up anyways. But yeah, this is a standalone dystopian romance. It's sapphic and it's blurbed as The Last of Us meets Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I'm like, it's an interesting mix of things. So I'm curious. And maybe it's not a fantasy then, because I don't see fantasy mentioned. So I'm intrigued. The next March 4th book is The Ragpicker King by Cassandra Clare. This is the sequel to Swordcatcher, which I have not read, but I have read every Shadowhunter book. I am an OG Shadowhunter fan, so I am going to pick up her newest book. I always have, I always will. So yeah, I am very excited to finally read Swordcatcher and hopefully read this one right after. The next book that I didn't actually write down the release date for, but I think it's in March sometime, is The River Has Roots by Amal El Motar. I don't know what this one's about, but it's the same author who co-wrote How to Save the Time War, which I read this year and I really, really liked. So I have to pick up what they're writing next. If there's a lot of like jump cuts, that's because while the heater is keeping me warm, it's also drying out the air and I keep having to clear my throat. It's really annoying. But I'd rather be warm, to be quite honest with you. The next book comes out March 11th. This is Blood Beneath the Snow by Alexandra Kennington. This is a romantasy with trials and like siblings angst. And honestly, I just have cover bias for this one because it's really pretty. I love snow, so yeah, this one's on there. Another March 11th release that I'm looking forward to is What Wakes the Bells by L. Tesh. This one is inspired by an ominous Prague legend. And it's described as a lavish gothic fantasy. So I love gothic fantasy, so I will be picking this one up. The next one is a little different genre-wise. It is The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This author I think is really well known for writing good horror novels. This comes out March 18th, by the way. I am not known for reading horror. I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, but I don't know, something about this one just like really gripped me, and if I end up liking it, I'm hoping maybe I can read some of this author's backlist. So yeah, this one is a chilling historical horror set in the American West, described as an American Indian revenge story, and it deals with religion and vampires. So that's so cool. I love the premise of that. So yeah, if I end up liking this one, I might want to read some of this author's backlist. So the next book, which will come as no surprise to anyone, is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This comes out March 18th. It is pretty well known that this is probably going to be Haymitch's story from the games. I love The Hunger Games. I'm not a big movie fan. Like, I don't love the movies, but that's because I think part of that's the reason I read it quite a while before the movies came out. So, like, I'm very protective of the story that I have in my head of when I first read it. And I don't love the way that it's, like, portrayed in the movies as much. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of you have had this feeling of, like, back when I was in middle school and I told people that The Hunger Games was my favorite book series, it, like, kind of meant something. Because it was only really big in, like, reader circles. But nowadays, like, if you say that it's your favorite series, it's just kind of brushed over, like, oh, you just don't read much. Because it's just so well known and, like, absorbed by the culture. I don't know. If you know what I'm talking about, hopefully someone out there can relate. I love The Hunger Games. It changed my life. It's in my favorite top 10 favorite series of all time. So I will absolutely be reading Sunrise on the Reaping because I love Haymitch. And yeah, so that one comes out March 18th. The next book is The Hymn to Dionysus by Natasha Pulley. I believe this author has written, like, Greek mythology before. Not written Greek mythology, but, like, written about Greek mythology. But I have not read any of their other work. But I love Dionysus. Dionysus is just such an interesting figure in Greek mythology. I was a Percy Jackson kid back in the day, so I too went through that phase of loving Greek mythology, and I took Latin when I was in school, so me and Dionysus, we've met, you know, in my studies, so I'm curious to see this take on him. I've never, I don't think, read a book just about Dionysus, but it's described as a reimagining of the story of Dionysus, and it's possibly queer, which I think would be in character and pretty cool to read about. So yeah, this comes out March 18th. The next book is House of Blight by Maxim M. Martino. Hopefully I said that right. This comes out April 8th, and it is the start to a romantic gothic fantasy duology. This one just interests me. House of Blight, and the cover is really kind of intriguing, so it caught my eye. And the next book is Boys with Sharp Teeth by Jenny Howell. This comes out again, also on April 8th. And this is a young adult dark academia, and the Goodreads page is comping it to The Raven Cycle, which is my second favorite series of all time. So if you're comping The Raven Cycle, like, that's a big thing. Like, if you throw that out there, you better deliver, is all I'm saying. Because I've read a book that does that, like, that also referenced The Raven Cycle. And, like, I'm sorry, but if you say that, my standards are, like, way up here, because The Raven Cycle is untouched by most series. It does something to you that no other book series can do. Not to be hyperbolic, but yeah, so it comps The Raven Cycle, so I'm like, okay, we'll see, you know? But I do like the cover a lot, so. The next book comes out on April 10th. It is A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayanide. I want to say Ayanide. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm so sorry. But this is a tale of revenge and rebellion set in a world inspired by multiple pre-colonial cultures. And so I was intrigued. It's like, ooh, that sounds really interesting. The next book is also coming out on April 10th. It is called The Voice of the Wretched by Kester Grant. This is the sequel to a book that I've read, The Court of Miracles, which I read, was that this year? Or 2024 or 2023? Honestly, cannot remember, but it's been a while since the first book came out, so I've been long awaiting the sequel. And it's a Les Mis inspired fantasy series that I enjoyed book one, you know, I liked it. I think I gave it like a 3.75 or a 3.5, an almost 4, something like that. I liked it. I think I reviewed it in one of my videos. I just can't remember which one. But yeah, excited for that release to finally, you know, come out. The next book on my list is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This comes out April 22nd. I've read I've technically tried to read 3 Emily Henry books. I read Beach Read and I thought it was okay. I didn't think it's as good as Some people say it is, but it wasn't awful. And then I tried to read Book Lovers, and I DNF'd it because I don't know, it just did not vibe with it. I thought I would. It's about two book lovers, but I think I got like 10 pages in, and something in my gut was like, no, I just could not get into it. But then last year I read Funny Story, which is her most recent release, and I really liked it. So I'm thinking maybe I just have to be really picky about the premises of her books that I pick up. But I liked Funny Story. I enjoyed that one. I've been debating about whether I want to read Happy Place, because I hear very mixed reviews on that. But Reagan from Peruse Project, who I love, she liked Funny Story and Happy Place, so maybe Happy Place. I will try you. But anyways, her newest book that's coming out is called Great Big Beautiful Life. It comes out April 22nd, and it's about two competing writers who want to tell this like famous person's story, like her life story. That's all I know. I'm curious. We'll see if it holds. Maybe I just like the direction her writing has gone in, like as she's written more. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, the next book I'm really excited for. It's The Raven's Collar by Antonia Jodgson? Is that how you say it? This comes out April 24th, and this just sounds so up my alley. It's a masterfully woven and playfully inventive tale of imperial intrigue and cutthroat competition. That's all I know. The cover, I think it's been released, hopefully. I saw one somewhere and it was really pretty, so I just have I have my gut feeling about this one that I'm really gonna like it. And I'm rarely wrong. I sometimes am, but not too often. The next book comes out April 29th. It is The Floating World by Axie O. This is the author who wrote The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which I own, have not read yet, but this one just sounds really good, and I've heard really good things about that book, that first book she wrote, so I'm intrigued. It's a Final Fantasy meets Shadow and Bone series, is what it's been called. Interesting. And it's reimagining of the Korean legend of celestial maidens. So I'm intrigued. And the cover is stunning. They released the cover for the sequel to it already as well, which interesting because I think it comes out later this year. And even more pretty. Like the sequel cover is so beautiful. They're both really pretty, so I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pick that up. The next book I'm interested in is All We Lost Was Everything by Sloane Harlow. This comes out May 6th. This is described as a dark romantic thriller, so another sort of genre shift. I love a thriller, a romance every once in a while. I like to keep things a little interesting. So I'm basically like fantasy with like a little sprinkle of the other genres. Just a little horror, a little romance, a little contemporary, just to keep me on my toes, But yeah, interested in that one. The next book I'm interested in is Friends with Benefits by Marissa Cantor. This also comes out May 6th. This is a lifelong best friends have a marriage of convenience for like financial benefits. I just like this is the kind of marriage of convenience that I find interesting. Like someone who you know so well and have been friends with for like forever, and you're doing it for like a reason that's kind of relatable. Like in this economy, for financial benefits, getting married, like I could see it. So like, I'm curious. I'm very curious. The next book on my list is The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, sorry. This comes out on May 13th, and it is a sapphic dark academia fantasy. I have not read Emily Tesh's sci-fi book that came out, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. But I read this duology from her, like, it's called Silver in the Woods and The Drowned Country. Very short books, really easy to read, like if you're just looking for like something short but actually really good. Because I have always struggled with like novellas and like short stories. They just never hook me. I don't know. I've always struggled with them, but these are both two short, very short books that I loved. And after I finished it, I was like, I want to read more Emily Tesh. So I haven't read their sci-fi book yet, but this is a new Sapphic Dark Academia fantasy that's coming out, and I was like, yes, absolutely yes. The next book on my list is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. This also comes out May 13th. I actually have not read anything by Joe Abercrombie yet, but I have a series on my TBR that I want to read by him. I've always been a little nervous because I think he's a little gory of a writer. Like, I get the feeling like, you know, nothing held back when it comes to like fighting and like blood and violence, and I don't always do so well with that. Like, I appreciate it on an objective level, but my weak, sensitive heart and stomach, maybe not. But I do want to read some of his works to see if it's worth it and if I can handle it. But this is his newest book coming out. It has religious undertones, it has elves and devils, and it's like an adult fantasy / horror. So I'm curious. I'm very curious. The next book comes out, well, it's interesting. I don't know when I think this book comes out at different dates. Like, I think it comes out earlier in the US, later in the UK, or earlier in the UK and later in the US, one of the two, because I keep seeing conflicting release dates. But it's Cruel as the Light by Sophie Clark. This is a fantasy about a demon hunter and a foot soldier who get thrown into this centuries-old war. And it's like demons versus like the Vatican is what it was described as to me. So I'm very curious about this one. I've actually already pre-ordered it, so excited. And the next book on my list also comes out on May 20th, and this is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I have Rachel Gillig's original duology. I bought it the day it came out, and yet it's just sat on my shelves waiting for me, like many of my books, but I will get there. I will get there, okay? But this is her newest book that's coming out. It is a gothic fantasy, not surprising given her first duology. It follows a prophetess forced on a quest to defeat the gods alongside a knight whose future she can't read. So, it just sounds like a really good premise. So, and then next, this is a big one. This is The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater. Comes out on June 3rd. This is her adult debut. Again, this is the author of The Raven Cycle, so you should understand my excitement, hopefully. This is her adult debut about a magical hotel. It's literary with sort of fantasy elements, which is very Maggie Stiefvater. And it's set in West Virginia in 1942. She could write anything and I'll read it. Like, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. One book that's not on this list is the graphic novel adaptation of The Raven Boys, which is coming out this year. And that's just because, like, I'm very excited for it, and I will probably buy a copy, but The Raven Cycle, again, sort of like what I said about the Hunger Games, like, I picture the story so perfectly in my head. Like, I can see scenes in my head, and they've stayed the same since I've read it. Every time I reread it, I see the same scene. It's like watching a movie. And I don't want to replace that with anyone else's art, even if it's good art that I think matches the series, if that makes sense. I like what I have in my head, and I don't want any movie or art to replace it. So I'll probably be buying it just to support, obviously, but I wouldn't say I'm anticipating it. But yeah, very much looking forward to The Listeners, her debut adult novel. So excited for that one. The next book also comes out on June 3rd. Something about earlier on in the months, everything comes out, is Fallen Gods by Rachel Van Dyken, I think is how you say her name. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was originally supposed to come out at the end of last year, and then it just didn't. I guess maybe the release date got pushed back. I could be mistaking it for another book, so don't hold me to that, but yeah, this comes out on June 3rd. This is a Norse mythology retelling set in Norway. Unsurprising. And I think it might be like a romance fantasy, like a romantasy. I'm not sure. I couldn't quite tell from reading the synopsis. And then the next book on my list also comes out on June 3rd. It is called Nobody in Particular by Sophie Gonzalez. I love this cover. Love this cover. This is again one of the contemporary books I'm looking forward to. Again, trying to find more sapphic books that I like. I have high hopes for this one. Looks really good. This is a story set at a boarding school following a sapphic romance between a princess and a scholarship student. It's a good setup. The next book on my list is A Dance of Lies by Brittany Arena. This comes out on June 10th. It is a fantasy romance about a dancer turned spy. And from reading the synopsis, it was very much giving like Throne of Glass vibes, like book 1 Throne of Glass vibes. So I'm curious. I put it on the list. I'm not sure, but I'm curious. And then the next book is Six Wild Swans by Holly Race, which comes out again on June 10th. This is a dragon fantasy filled with sapphic yearning set in the Tudor period. I'm curious. I'd like to know. And then another big one that I bolded is A Far Better Thing by H.G. Perry. Like, give me a moment. A Far Better Thing, if you've heard that, you would know. If you've read A Tale of Two Cities, it's a reference to Sydney Carton from A Tale of Two Cities. And I actually interacted with the author on Twitter because I was like, do you know what this book is going to do to me? But anyways, it comes out on June 17th. It is a heart-rending fantasy of fairy revenge set during the French Revolution, of course. And it's been called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell Meets A Tale of Two Cities. If you didn't know, A Tale of Two Cities, I collect two classic books, and that is Jane Eyre and A Tale of Two Cities. I read A Tale of Two Cities when I was a sophomore in high school over the summer. It was our assigned reading, and I was never the same. The character of Sydney Carton kind of carved me into the reader that I am, and I like the characters that I like today because of Sydney Carton. So yeah, I saw this and I was like, this is just going to take my heart and it's going to stomp on it like 50,000 times, and I'm just going to be traumatized all over again. So yeah, high school me was not okay, and post-college me is also not going to be okay. So glad they can agree on that. Really, really, really exciting. Excited for this one. And also it's a fairy sort of retelling of it. H.G. Perry has written books before that I actually own a few of them, and I haven't read them yet, but I'm really excited to. This could potentially destroy me, and I'll probably read it the day it comes out, just because how could I not? But moving on. On July 7th, The Nightblood Prince by Molly X. Chang is coming out. She wrote, what is that book series called? The Wicked Gods or something? I'm sorry, so many fantasy titles in my brain, I can't keep track of all of them, but she wrote a fantasy YA series that came out recently. This is just her next book, and this is a romance fantasy following an empress prophesized to unite two warring kingdoms, and she is caught between two princes of these warring kingdoms. So we love a good love triangle. So I'm excited for this one, and the cover is really, not to be, surface level, but the cover is really pretty. The next book on my list is a contemporary romance. It's called Love is a War Song by Danica Neva. This comes out July 22nd. This is a romantic comedy following a Native American pop star and a cowboy. She ends up having to work alongside him at a horse ranch. I love the cover of this one, and it just sounds really, really good. I follow the author on Twitter, and just like the things that they've been posting, I've been like, this one's gonna be one I enjoy. I'm pretty picky with my contemporary romance. There's a lot I don't have any interest in, but this one caught my eye. Also, just quickly speaking on romance, you will notice that no Ali Hazelwood books are on this list. I loved her STEM books, like The Love Hypothesis, Love Theoretically. Those are two of my favorites, and I liked Love on the Brain as well. But I haven't liked her last like 3 books. I didn't like Bride. I didn't like what am I trying to say? Not in Love. I didn't like Not in Love. And maybe it's just her last 2 books, but I've just been kind of like not feeling it recently. And the newest one that she's gonna release this year is, I think it's called Deep End. Sorry, my hair is bothering me. The newest book she's releasing is called Deep End. It's like a sports romance. And I read the blurb, and I was also, I just don't think it's gonna be for me. Just the way things are going, I'm like, I'm gonna hold off just for a little bit. So yeah, that's why you will not see her name on this list. But getting back to the list, the next book I'm looking forward to comes out on July 22nd. It's called Steel and Spellfire by Laura E. Weymouth. I loved, what's it called? I loved The Light Between Worlds. That was her debut young adult fantasy. It's like a Narnia retelling, and it broke me. I read it in a time when I was like very emotionally unstable. If you've ever dealt with depression and you like to see it sort of reflected on page, well, I think, especially if you're a young adult, I think you'd really like it. I love that book. And she's written other books that I own and have not read yet, but I'm going to keep adding to that list. And this is her most recent book coming out. It's about a gifted mage and a royal guard navigating mysterious murders in a magical Regency-inspired fantasy. So it sounds really good. All her book premises sound like they were tailor-made for me. They're all like foresty or dark or gothic or historical. Like they're made for me personally. So very excited for this one. The next book on my list is While the Dark Remains by Joanna Ruth Meyer. This is another author whose books I own. I own like 4 or 5 of her books. I have not read them yet because there's not enough time. But this comes out July 29th, and this is going to be her most recent. And it's about a young woman who escaped captivity in the court of a cruel king, and she returns in disguise to bring him down. But things get complicated when she falls for his son. It's just a great premise, and all of her book covers look like stories that I would like. I'm very easily swayed by a fantasy book cover that speaks to me, so all of her covers do, and all of her synopses, again, are like foresty, historical, like rural. They're all something that sound like I would enjoy them. So yeah, this is just her next one. Oh, I actually do have it on here. The Raven Boys graphic novel comes out on August 5th. So I guess I did put it on here. I am gonna get it, so. The next book on my list is House of the Beast by Michelle Wong. This comes out August 5th. This is a dark fantasy debut filled with divine rituals, intense combat, and twisted romance. And I was like, okay. House of the Beast is just a really cool title and sounds like something I would like. And then the next book is another sort of sequel book that I haven't read the first 2 books of yet, but I really am excited to. I think I'm really gonna like them. Again, I sometimes broke my own rule, so this is The Curse of Gods by Kate Dramis. This comes out August 7th, and this is the third book in a adult fantasy series. It just looks really cool. I have the Goldsboro editions, I have the Fairy Loot editions, and I will be continuing my collection. The next book is one that I'm sure you've heard of if you're a R.F. Kuang lover or just a book or fantasy lover. It's called Catabasis. I think that's how you say that. I could be wrong. It comes out August 26th. This is a dark academia fantasy. It's sort of been blurbed as Dante's Inferno meets Piranesi, which is intriguing. My sister has read Piranesi and loved it. We've both read Dante's Inferno, and it's really interesting. It's a good book. So I will be picking up this one. This one sounds interesting. I think Catabasis, it's a term that means something that I can't remember, but I know the cover has like the endless stairs that also has an official name that I don't know at the moment, so forgive me. The next book is The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovellino. This comes out September 25th. This is a fantasy following the undying bond of a knight and a mage. This is a romantic epic fantasy for fans of Gideon the Ninth. I love Gideon the Ninth. Love Gideon the Ninth. Hopefully we're getting that fourth book at some point, because we're all dying here. But yeah, this one sounds really good. I love a knight-mage duo, and it just looks interesting. So excited to get to this one. And then next is Bitten by Jordan Stephanie Gray. This comes out September 30th. This was called Crescent City meets Fourth Wing, but with werewolves. I love a good werewolf story. I am a vampire girl, first and foremost, forever and always. But I am rooting for a revival of werewolf fiction. Because werewolves are great also. Like, why choose, you know? Why pit two queens against each other, if you ask me? But yeah, excited for this one. It's Bitten by Jordan Stephanie Gray. The next book on my list, again, we kind of peter out here. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more releases that I'll talk about in future videos. Maybe I'll make like a mid-year update on this, because I'm sure there's a lot of books that'll come out later this year that I just don't know about yet. But again, this is just what I have on my Goodreads and what I've seen thus far. So yeah, the next book is Fallen City by Adrienne Young. This is supposed to come out November 4th. This is the start of a duology that I've seen her talk about for a long time. So Adrienne Young wrote Sky in the Deep, which is one of my very favorite young adult standalones of all time. It's so good. I've reread it multiple times, and it touches me every time. It's so good. And you've probably seen her name because she started writing, she wrote another young adult series that was okay, and then she's been writing literary, fantasy-ish, not really fantasy, mostly literary with a touch of magic. I've tried to read one or two of them, and I just didn't like them. I don't know. I swear she put something in Sky in the Deep that I haven't seen from her since, so I've been kind of wary of reading anything new from her, but I've heard her talk about this series for a long time. So yeah, Fallen City is the first in this duology. It is a young adult fantasy duology that she's been working on for years. I don't know anything about the premise. I just know that it's supposed to start coming out this year, and I'm very excited, and I will be trying this because maybe she put that passion back in there. Maybe the spark has returned, so to speak. So, and then only two more left. Thank you for hanging in there if you've hung on so long, because this is probably going to be a long one. Oh my god, it's 50 minutes already. Anyways, the next book on my list is The Sacred Space Between by Kaylee Reed. This is supposed to come out on November 20th. This is a gothic romance fantasy following an iconographer and a saint with dangerous magic. It sounds so good. A gothic romance with religious strife. Yes. Yes. Then lastly, not least, is The Wolf and His King by Finn Longman. This is supposed to come out November 27th. This is an adult fantasy debut with werewolves. Again, werewolves. We're rooting for you. And I think it's queer. I'm pretty sure it's queer. It's called The Wolf and His King, and I'm just excited to get to it. I'm here to root for the werewolves, but keep the vampires. Like, come on, we can coexist over here. But yeah, that is my entire list. I'm going to wrap things up now because I've been talking for so long. If you've hung in all the way, hopefully you've heard of some books that maybe you weren't on your radar before. Sorry. I tried to include books that I thought might not, have been buzzed about recently. But yeah, if any of these sound good, or if you just like to share what books you're excited for this year, I'd love to hear about it. I do know Onyx Storm. I didn't include it on the list, but Onyx Storm is coming out tomorrow from when I'm filming this, so I understand there's hype for that, and I will be picking it up, so don't you worry. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. Yeah, just leave your thoughts below if you want to. I'd love to hear what books you're looking forward to reading this year, and that is all. I will see you later in my next video.